Think about Bill Gates or like Jeff Bezos. Let's use Jeff Bezos. There's a dude who probably has $100 billion in expenses every year, and maybe has $101 billion in revenue every year. So he's got a profit margin of, what is that? Well, less than 1%. It's like 0.010%. He's on the lowest commission split of all. He's got a huge amount of expenses and a tiny, tiny profit margin because he's one of the richest men in the world. But if you do the math on that, he's still making $1 billion a year income. And he's got a jet, multiple jets, probably a sports team, multiple houses, but he's got the lowest margin. I want to talk about your real estate budget, okay? And I want to talk about what your real estate budget should actually look like. We've talked about how to manage your financials, how to master your accounting practices. And in a nutshell, that's get an accountant, right? Have him handle your payroll, quarterlies. He's also going to give you referrals too, right? A good accountant that you work with that close should be referring you clients. Accountants refer a ton of business. So if your accountant's not referring you business, he's referring it to somebody. That's for darn sure, right? He's going to help you look out the front window, not the rear view mirror window. Help you manage your operating account. You're going to set up a tax savings, an income account, and you're going to keep a pad in there of 2 to 3 months. Next up, we talk about your actual budget. The real estate agent's budget is what kind of makes it and defines the future growth of any real estate agent. It's crucial. Real estate agent budget is very, very simple, and it works for all different agents. I don't care about your production because it's all based on percentages. So no matter how much you buy or sell, I don't even care if you're starting out and you haven't sold anything, the budget will still work for you. I don't care if you're doing, 200 million, 300 million in sales volume, the budget will still work for you because it's a sliding scale based on percentages. So it pertains to everyone. Very important to understand it and know it for all the reasons we talked about for making informed decisions. Okay, so let me show it to you. This is our budget template, and you will be able to get this out the side. Do not worry. And you can download it right next to the video. So if you take a look here, it says real estate team budget schedule, but don't worry, this is any real estate agent. The only reason I say team is because, if you're going to get this big, you're going to need a team, but we can always start over here, right? And everything before it. And that's usually your solo agent territory. And this is just based on different amounts of sales production. It starts across the top with sales volume. And this is the total sales volume an agent does. In this first column, they're at 8 million. In the next column, they're at 13 million, then 18 million, 25 million, 40 million, 60 million, 80, and 100 million. Okay. Now the important areas that I really want any agent to focus on when they analyze their profit and loss or take a look at their budget are always going to come at our numbers down the left-hand side. You see 1, 2A, 2B. Can everybody see that? Everybody see my cursor moving down next to them in yellow? Okay. And then the 2, 3, and 4. I've got the 4 main numbers shaded in kind of a gray color here. Okay. No, and we're going to look at them always when we analyze a profit and loss or our budget. We always look at them in order. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then of course we got 2A and 2B here. Okay. So I'm going to go in that order. The most important one is gross commission income. This is how much GCI you get. I always like my clients to try to get 3%. I know in some areas 2.5%. And if you go lower than that, that's on you. I think a good agent with good skills knows how to hold the line on that kind of stuff. However, GCI, just because you have a lot of sales volume doesn't mean you have this GCI. Typically, you're going to have a little less than that because, some listing agents not that great at their listing skills and can only pay less. That makes sense. So they just cave. Don't have very good scripts, dialogues, and objection handlers. So with that, if they haven't had that kind of training or coaching, you might have 2.5% here, more than 3%. So with that, you're going to see the GCI number. This is my 100% number, I call. In other words, all of these percentages down below on the budget are percentages of GCI. Okay, so all percentages are calculated as a percentage of gross commission income. GCI, it's how much money you're making. Okay, so each expense should always be a percentage of GCI. And that's how we look at our profit loss to see how much our expenses are, at least quarterly. You could do it every month, like I said, but the big teams will do it every month, but I like to do it at least quarterly, so I can see how we're doing, making sure we're not over or under budget too much in a lot of different categories. So you can also write your units in this mark, and that the reason units don't really matter because everything's a percentage of GCI. But if you're in the middle of Nebraska, you might have an average price of $110,000, whereas Los Angeles, your average price could be 1.2 million. Who knows? So depending on where you live, that unit number, you write it in here as to what that unit means to you. And that will matter because the more units you have, you might need to up your administrative salaries. Because if you're closing 100 units, you're going to have a hard time doing that by yourself. In fact, that's going to probably start to push one administrative assistant. You might need two by that point. However, you won't be making a lot of GCI if that's in Nebraska. So you may not be able to afford that. So that's where the units come in, admin salaries, the amount of workload that comes through with that. So you could fill that in for yourself. Otherwise, all the numbers are pretty much set based on a percentage applied to anyone, anywhere, anyhow, any price, any production level. And then once we get to a point to paying administrative salaries, we know that should be 12% of your GCI. Marketing and lead gen should be 10% of your GCI. Always. That's always your number. So you should always be spending 10% of your GCI on marketing and lead gen, the two things that should bring you business. If you are well under budget there, that means you're going to have a hard time jumping to the next category to the right. And the next category is good because that means more money with less work. Everything I do in coach is about getting more money for less work. And that's what jumping to each column is. That's celebration time. Yay, hooray, party time. Because every one of those gets you more net income with what should be less work if you're doing it right. And if you're moving from column to column, you're probably doing it right. It's kind of hard not to. Now, if you add up all of these operating expenses in number 2, the total operating expenses, these are the general ones up above. That should be 30% of your gross commission income. 30%, okay? And notice of that 30%, more than 2/3 of them come from admin salaries and marketing and lead gen. There's almost no other expenses that are tangible. Most agents don't put any money here. This is coaching, training, going to conferences, things like that. That's probably your third biggest expense. After that, everything's just nickels and dimes. So most agents, they just get stuck. They work like banshees. They work like crazy. They do everything themselves. They can't afford admin. They can't do anything because they will not put the money down. They won't spend operating expenses. They'll do cost of sales. They'll pay things out of a commission check all day long because that doesn't feel like real money. They never really get that in the bank account. That's just taken out before they get it. There's no stress around that. See what I'm saying? But money you have to pay every 2 weeks out of a bank account, or every month out of a bank account, that scares people. It's just emotional though. It's not logical. That's why people will love to pay a transaction coordinator $600 a closing when they'd be a lot cheaper if they paid one $45,000 a year, because it just doesn't feel as damaging to pay somebody every 2 weeks. It's so much easier to pay money only when I close. It's just emotionally a relief. Again, not business sense. Make sense? You start closing 100 transactions a year, you are not going to want to pay someone per transaction anymore. And they barely do any work compared to what a full-time person working would for you. Full-time person working for you, dedicated to you, is going to do 10 times as much work for you as someone who just works per file. Things like that. So they get stuck there too. And they get stuck on spending on marketing and lead gen too. They just get stuck. They never have leads to get to agents that work for them because they won't spend the money. They don't know how to get them. They don't do that because they don't get coaching. They'll never make these expenses. So they just get stuck in solo agent, I'm a great warrior, but a terrible chief world. A chief invests in their business, right? My favorite baseball team's the Los Angeles Dodgers. Why do I like the Dodgers? Because they freaking invest in their business. They spend money and they got great players. All those people that run around and say, wow, that's the best team money can buy, dang right. They run a good business. They invest in their players and they win a lot of games. And they've been in the playoffs 10 years in a row. If you like to cheer for a team that doesn't invest in their players, and you say, I'm a low market team, so I'm going to cheer for them. Well, they're the ones that are getting the ticket prices out of you, but don't have to pay the expenses. Don't you wish your team would invest? Just like, don't you wish you invest in your business? Is it that important to you to invest in your business? That's why it's so important, but you won't do it if you don't use a budget. The budget is what gives you confidence. So the first thing a coach does with you is give you a budget. Okay. And then we're going to check your operating expenses every quarter to make sure they're not exceeding 30% by too much for any abnormal amount of time, right? So you have two major expenses, really. Cost of sales, number 3 down here, and operating expenses, number 2. Remember, more than 2/3 of them are from these two areas right here. Your operating expenses are the difference between the two. Are operating expenses that no matter how many transactions you close, you're going to have to pay them. They go out every month or every 2 weeks. They're not tied to a transaction. That's an operating expense. If you don't close the transactions, you're still paying them. A cost of sales is always tied to a transaction. That basically comes out of your commission check. And it literally used to come out of a commission check. That's the thing. Like back, I don't know, decades ago when I sold real estate, actually, they would actually cut a commission check to the broker. And the broker would then cut checks to the agents. Okay. And that's the amount of that check is your gross commission income. Okay. So a lot of you have already been calculating this wrong in your head because you've been doing it on your own because you don't have coaches. Your gross commission income is your gross commission income, the total amount before you pay your real estate brokerage. If you pay a cap, you got to add that on to your GCI. It's not how much you show your accountant. That's your net commission income. That's after you pay your brokerage, your buyer's agents, any referral fees, anything like that. That's net commission income. Gross commission income is the amount of the total commission paid to the side you represented, the buyer side or the seller side. It's the line item on the HUD, on the settlement statement. Before they pay your broker, before you pay any other sales agents that work for you. So in a nutshell, to a real estate team, it's any buyer's agent side commissions, sales agent commissions, referral fees, showing assistant commissions, or what you pay your broker. Royalties, franchise fees, commission splits, caps, all that kind of stuff. Those are costs of sales. They are you don't pay them if you don't close anything. And that's the difference. Then we watch that, and you can see over time, the amount of cost of sales goes up tremendously for real estate teams. See how the percentage slowly starts to creep up too? And that's because as the team gets bigger, more and more of the team's production is going to come from other agents. Like a solo agent in these first two lines, maybe they have, this is a solo agent here. They're just probably paying, this is a solo agent that's on a 90% commission split for everything with no cap. Let's say, I don't know, it could be a couple things. It could be an agent with a cap of $24,000 and they just paid $24,000 to their broker, or it could be someone who's on a 90-10 split that pays 10% to their broker. Either way, it's just $24,000 is what they pay to their broker probably. But then they start to bring on maybe a buyer's agent or just a showing assistant here. Then maybe we got two of them or one good one, real good one. and then maybe we got 3 of them. So as you get more and more agents, more and more of your team's production is going to come from them, and less is going to come from you, the lead agent, the team leader, the rainmaker. So clearly this amount's going to go up. That's the whole idea, right? Members of a team, you're like generating income for the team, and less is coming from you. But here's where that gets scary for people that don't like numbers and don't do profit and losses and don't get coaches and don't like budgets. Look at the net income amount. Look at the percentages. This is how much of your income you're keeping. Now all you emotional people, oh my God, you're only on a 60% split, 55, you see that? That's because you're spending expenses. Low producing agents, they're split sensitive. If you don't believe me, go look at your discount brokerages in your town. It's where all the low producers are. Then you go look at all the highest producers, and they're not at the discount brokerages. It's because they know to invest in their business. They know that the net income dollar amount keeps growing steadily, despite the fact the profit margin drops. Here's the thing to remember, all you low commission split focused, expense concerned, sensitive people. You're going to be low on the totem pole in business if you stay that way. Because the richest people in the world have the lowest profit margins. I'm going to say it again. The richest people in the world have the lowest profit margins. My wife, the largest team in Central California, and she's off this chart a little bit. And her profit margin is below 30%. That's the split my wife's on. If you want to run a traditional real estate brokerage, like you're going to run the brokerage, you want to open up your own brokerage someday, you're going to be below 10% on your split. For sure. That's going to be your profit margin. You're going to have expenses all over the place. And if you don't have expenses, then you yourself are going to have to start selling because your brokerage is going to be losing. So your brokerage is going to lose money, which is 95% of brokerages lose money. And that's why the owner of the broker sells. And if you pulled his commissions out of it, the brokerage would be losing money. That's the reality of it. But they don't know that. Why? They don't have budgets, profit margins, or coaches. Very few people do. Think about Bill Gates or like Jeff Bezos. Let's use Jeff Bezos. There's a dude who probably has $100 billion in expenses every year, and maybe has $101 billion in revenue every year. So he's got a profit margin of, what is that? Well, less than 1%. It's like 0.010%. He's on the lowest commission split of all. He's got a huge amount of expenses and a tiny, tiny profit margin because he's one of the richest men in the world. But if you do the math on that, he's still making $1 billion a year income. And he's got a jet, multiple jets, probably a sports team, multiple houses, but he's got the lowest margin. And that's true. The bigger, like Warren Buffett, guys like that are way up there in wealth, man, they have huge expenses because they invest in their business. They're not afraid. They don't get stuck. They say, I'm going to do this. I know because all the other successful people do this. So I get a coach. I invest in marketing. I do the things. I look at the path and the success clues that have been left in front of me. And I do those things. I do what all the top agents do and all the top teams do. I use a profit and loss. I use a budget. They all do that. And if not, they may not even know that they're not profitable. But that's the idea. So we're always trying to look at these 4 major numbers, right? We look at GCI. We know what that is, right? We look at our GCI. Oftentimes that's not going to show up on a P&L. All we're going to see on a profit and loss there is our net income. So what we're going to have to do is go find out what the agents on our team, how much did I pay them? I don't remember that because I don't pay them. They get cut directly out of from the closing company, out of escrow or title. So I got to find out, and usually your broker keeps track of that, or maybe, it's something you keep track of hopefully throughout the year. That's the one thing you got to monitor. Your accountant's not going to know how to find that, right? Because we got to know what your GCI is. Usually you'll know, your broker will know what you paid them. But paying your own agent, you got to find out. Everything else is going to come off profit and loss statement on here, right? Your operating expenses, we're going to know what those are. That's for sure. And then your cost of sales, again, we're going to find that out. That's how much we paid our agents and how much we paid our broker. And then our net income is always going to be decreasing by way of profit margin. And we're going to be okay with that. The goal is to decrease it, but our net income is going to keep jumping up, climbing slowly up. And we're going to know how to increase our expenses. And this is where it gets scary. That's why so few people do it. Look at what these guys are paying. Administrative salaries. How about paying that nut, cracking that nut every month? I mean, that's what they're doing, guys. It's not just all based on income. Here's marketing and lead gen. Can you imagine spending these monthly dollars? That's what they're all doing. If you think you're going to be able to do that without getting the coach, have fun. Never seen it done, but give it a shot. Figure it out. We'll wait until it feels good, get a good closing month, then I'll do it, because only then I'll have the confidence. Just like I'll join the gym on New Year's Eve, because at that moment I'll be so drunk I'll sign it in blood with somebody. And I'll be motivated on New Year's. That'll be the one time I'm motivated, but then I'll quit by the end of January because I do everything off of emotion. Or you can do it like a business person and follow the clues. That's the idea. Make sense? So that's how we fill this out. And you can actually start to see here as you analyze the P&L, you can see how real estate teams grow all of a sudden. You can start to see, at this point, we've got a full-time admin over here. This might be a part-time. Could be a transaction coordinator that you pay by transaction, or a virtual assistant. Could be a part-time, full-time person. We got a full-time admin probably. Again, it's based on a percentage. So depending on where you live, that salary may be too much. It may not be enough. Who knows? Point of the matter is, that's probably a full-time at the 390,000, 13 million sales volume mark. And that's going to be somebody who does your administrative, your transaction coordination, your listing management, and a whole lot of your in-house marketing, probably managing your budget, your financials, and getting those to and from the agent, team dashboards, starting to think about hiring practices, setting up your system. So your general admin, those four things really: listing to contract, contract to close, marketing, and your general admin work. And again, here we are, maybe an assistant VA for them. Now we might have 2 full-times, maybe 3 full-times. Usually have 2 TCs and a listing and marketing person by now out here, and it just keeps moving up. Marketing lead gen, same thing. We always hold that at 10%. So if you're a solo agent, be thinking about 10% right now. That's your main expense on you. If you've got money in the bank, I would go with the coach next. And I'm biased, but I've seen what works. And I've seen how people quickly get to where they need to go. And it always is those people. It's the people that can afford to do that. So, it's very emotional as to what one can afford. That's an emotional thing if you don't have one of these sitting in front of you. So you want to really get out of emotional decisions with your business in a very, very big way. Okay. And remember, these 2 expenses are what make up the bulk of your operating expenses. The next biggest thing is going to be your training and education to help you stay on this track, to know what all these numbers mean and what they should be spent on as you move up. Another thing I'll show you is rent on here. Rent is very, very small. If this applies for a broker owner too, just to let you know, this whole chart will. Of course, a broker owner rent's going to be a lot higher. So if you own your own brokerage or your own office that you work out of, your rent's going to be a lot higher, but typically your cost of sales are going to be reduced because you're not paying that broker a percentage, like that 10% split or the $24,000 cap, or however whatever commission split you're on with your broker. Because if you own your own, you're just going to pay it up here in rent. And usually it's a wash. It ends up being about the same expense. You go out on your own, well, now you got to pay that much in rent. So, it's usually very close between the two, but that's really the difference between a broker and a real estate sales agent, just so you know. So all you people that want to go out there and open up your own brokerages, just understand, there's a much higher profit margin in real estate teams. That's why real estate teams make the most money. And, you do see teams that are brokerages from time to time, and that's different. That's a team. So they can hold that higher profit margin. Real estate brokerages, are anywhere typically around 4 to 5%. maybe up to 7-8% margin, if, assuming the brokerage standing on its own. Otherwise, all the income is coming from the broker owner that sells themselves. If the broker owner doesn't sell, it's because they've got a much larger brokerage with a lot of expenses and they're running a very low profit margin. Just so that all makes sense to you. So that's our real estate budget, okay? Next, we're going to be talking about the profit and loss statement and how to apply the budget to the profit and loss statement. Okay, that's it on the budget. And I hope you learned a lot from this. This is high level stuff, guys. I mean, this is super high level. This is, honestly, other coaching companies don't know this stuff because they don't coach teams like we do and high level people. And they don't usually coach on, economic and agent financial models. So I hope you like this. And the P&L is really cool too. I don't care how much you sell or how new you are, you should be doing these things. And you'll see why next week for sure on the P&L if you don't believe me already. That's a real important one. So I hope that helps. That's your real estate budget. And that is your agent financials for today.